Hi. I would like to show you a few of the features of a suite of sensors I developed to look at cookstove in households. I have two sensors here. This one is a cookstove tracker. You can place on your stove and it's going to look at the stove temperature and its usage. And this one is a PM2.5 sensors. You can either wear it to measure exposure, and you see it's very small and lightweight, or you can place it somewhere to monitor the PM2.5 of the kitchen or the living room. And both of those sensors are wireless, and so this is the launcher you can use to start and stop your sensors. So you have a touch screen here, and if you want to deploy your sensors, you're going to press New House here, and it's going to start scanning for all the sensors around. So while scanning, you can see here you have the battery level of your launcher, the firmware number, and here you have a home button that you can always press to go back home. And so you've seen that if it found the 5 sensors, so I'm going to go ahead and select them, and then press Add here. And so then for each of the 5 sensors, we can select, tell them where we're going to deploy them, mostly. So you can see household exact 38 here. We can put it maybe on a biogas stove. The HAPEx 8, so HAPEx 8 that would be this one. You can deploy them on your cook. Then exact 58, you're going to put it maybe on a freestone fire. And your HAPEx 56 on the LPG stove if you have if the household has an LPG stove, for example. And your last HAPEx, you're going to have it stay in the kitchen. And so now that you put those metadata, you're going to select the log rate of your sensors. And based on the log rate, it's going to tell you for how long it can log data. So there's 2 things you can monitor. Like most stove use monitor, you can monitor the stove temperature. But in this case, you know, the mission time will be a bit shorter. For example, 16 days at 1 minute log rate. But really where it gets more interesting if you just monitor usage. So it's not going to store the temperature, it's going to just look at, you know, whether the stove is used or not. But in this case, you can have a much longer mission time. And so that means, you know, the EXACT can just, they have inside algorithm that's going to let you know whether the stove is being used or not based on the temperature. And how they can do that accurately is actually because they measure 2 temperatures. They measure the ambient temperature and they measure the stove temperature thanks to the infrared sensor. And so they look at the difference between the two. And if the stove is hotter than the ambient temperature, then that means the stove is being used. And so that's what allows them, you know, to monitor accurately a cooking time, even for stove with high thermal mass. So that's that. And you can choose, you know, how fast. Also, you have a fast option if need be. For the HAPEx, you're going also to choose, you know, your mission time, and here we're just going to select fast so that I can show you how they work. And then on the last page, you select the household number. So let's say you put on the household 888, and you select the study arm, whether it's control or intervention. And then you start your data, and you see that all the sensors turn green. That means they've been successfully started. You can check their status here. Now they're all running, and you have real-time measurements here that are updated. So they log the data in their internal memory, but also broadcast the data, and so you can have a look at the real-time data here. And so that's it. You've started your sensors. They're all working. You can turn off your launcher and come back later when you want to download your data. So let's say now you're back into your household. So you want to download your data. And this time you're going to press on the Open House button right here. And so it's going to scan for 15 seconds for all the sensors around. And remember, the household number was 888. So we should see this number appear. And there it is. So we press to the 888, and now you have you land directly on the summary page of your sensors. And here you'll see a lot of very useful information that are displayed. So for each of your exact sensors, you're going to have the number of cooking events per day, the average cooking time per day, and the last time the stove was used. For each of your LPG stove, your biogas stove, and your freestone stove. So this is very useful information because then you can ask the cook about this data and get some qualitative information about why this stove has not been used or this stove has been used a lot. That allow you to understand, get some explanation behind the data. So I think it could be quite useful. And for the HAPEx, you have the average PM measurements, but you also have the average compliance measurements because the HAPEx have accelerometers that monitor whether they've been worn or not. And so you can know, if one of the HAPEx has not been worn, then you can potentially act on it and have them, wear an extra 24 hours or something like that, or you know straight away that your HAPEx has not been worn. And so I believe that could be quite useful. You still have access to the real-time data and your status data. And then you can just, press stop download. You can just press download only if you want to let your sensor running. And so you see now they all turn green. That means they've been downloaded. And they should all be stopped now. Yeah, you see they're all stopped. And so now all your data is on your SD card right here. So let me show you the file and what we can do with this. So I wanted to show you how a file would look like, and so that's an example of a file that's directly downloaded from the launcher. You have three sensors here, two exact sensors, one that I put on a freestone fire, one on a rocket stove, and one HAPEx. So it's actually a kind of simulation here. I did that under the hood with two stoves, and I put the HAPEx above the two stoves, just to show you a little bit some data. So you have the header here on top, and then you have the actual data of the timestamps and the measurements. So on the header you'll find the household ID number, the number of sensors put on stove, the number of sensors measuring PM, the start and stop time, the number of log, the stadium of the household, and the type of data logged by the exact sensors. And then you have a kind of a summary of the number of cooking events per day, cooking time, and this is the average per day. But here actually I logged for less than a day, so that's why the data looks a little bit weird. But if you have like multiple day, then you would have the actual average per day. And so that's for the exact. This is for the HAPEx, and for each HAPEx you will have the average HAPEx, the compliance, and the calibration data. And so this header really you already have the average cooking time, number of cooking events, without having to do any analysis of any sort. So if that's just what you want to know, you already have that. You don't need to run any analysis. But then if you want to look a little bit more about what's happening, you have the timestamps, and here we have one timestamp every 4 seconds, but usually it's every minute. And then you have your data. So you have first the usage of the two stoves, the compliance, so that's just binary data, 0 or 1, and then you have the actual measurements of the temperature and of the PM for the HAPEx. So I just went ahead and graphed that, and this is what you get. So on the bottom you have the time, on the left here you have the PM measurements, and on the right you have the temperature. So the green trace is for the rocket stove, the yellow is for the freestone fire, and the blue is the HAPEx on top of the two stove. So it's pretty basic, but you can see that when the rocket stove is turned on, the HAPEx picked up the smoke at the same time, and then when the freestone fire was turned on, also a lot more smoke was generated. So just to show you, an example of the graph you would get out of the box from the raw file. Really, you just have to graph that. It'll take you a couple of seconds really to get there. And then, of course, you can do analysis across households. I'm developing a module that will allow you to, very quickly get average and graphs for multiple households. So that's it for this quick tour of the features of the HAPEx and EXACT sensors. I worked really hard to make a product that's both powerful but also really easy to use. I hope you like it. They are now available. You can find more information on my website at climate-solutions.net, and you'll find there the complete data sheets, specification user manual for both the sensor as well as the pricing. And please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'll be more than happy to help you understand their features. Thank you. Looking forward to hearing from you. Bye.